Hello, my name is John Gartung, and today I'll be evaluating Priceline.com's terms of use, focusing specifically on Part 1, Sections A through F. Priceline has decided to evaluate its terms of use, and I've been assigned to analyze and perhaps overhaul the website's user agreement. This review assesses whether the terms form a legally binding contract, whether users are reasonably bound by them, whether users can pursue Priceline, and finally, what changes I would recommend making the terms more legally enforceable and user-friendly. The Priceline User Agreement, also called its Terms and Conditions, is currently linked in the website footer. This means Priceline is using what's known as a browser wrap agreement. Unlike click wrap agreements that require users to affirmatively click a box or button indicating agreement, browser wrap terms are passively presented and often unnoticed unless a user actively scrolls to find them. This legal design is the root of many of the problems I'll be discussing today. To be considered a valid contract, a terms of use agreement must meet basic contractual elements: offer, acceptance, and mutual assent. While Priceline clearly presents an offer of service, the real issue lies in whether a user actually accepts the terms. In their current form, users are not required to indicate any agreement before interacting with the site. Courts have repeatedly rejected the enforceability of browser app agreements under similar circumstances. In Nguyen v. Barnes & Noble Incorporated from 2014, the court held that a website's terms located only in a hyperlink at the bottom of the page did not constitute sufficient notice to users. Similarly, in Specht v. Netscape Communications Corp. From 2002, users were not bound by terms that were not clearly visible before downloading software. Given Priceline's current implementation, it's highly unlikely that a court would find their terms to be a valid and enforceable contract. With that, are users bound to Priceline's terms of use without clicking I agree or affirming consent? No. Without an explicit mechanism requiring users to acknowledge or agree to the terms, such as a checkbox or pop-up prior to using services like booking or even searching for a flight, Priceline cannot reasonably claim that users have consented to the agreement. This was reaffirmed in Nguyen, where the court emphasized that actual or constructive notice is required for enforceability. Simply burying the link in the footer is not enough. In fact, I verified this myself by conducting a flight search on Priceline.com. At no point was I required to acknowledge the terms of use before proceeding. This shows that Priceline does not employ any affirmative consent mechanism. Can I sue Priceline? According to Priceline's terms, users are bound by an arbitration clause, which prevents them from filing lawsuits and instead mandates resolution through private arbitration. However, this clause relies on the enforceability of the terms overall. As established, if the contract itself is non enforceable due to the lack of notice or acceptance, then any arbitration clause within it is also unenforceable. This is supported by Specht case, where the court refused to enforce an arbitration clause in a browser app agreement because the user had no reasonable opportunity to review the terms. Thus, despite the Priceline claims its terms, users could very likely sue Priceline in court because the arbitration agreement would probably not hold up. The primary recommendation is for Priceline to transition to a click wrap agreement. This would involve requiring users to affirmatively acknowledge the terms by checking a box or clicking an I agree button prior to booking or using site features. Courts have consistently upheld click wrap agreements as enforceable contracts because they demonstrate clear notice and consent. Recent case law further reinforces this point. In Fu versus Uber Technologies Incorporated from just last year, 2024, The New York Court of Appeals upheld Uber's ClickWrap agreement as valid and binding, demonstrating that clear user acknowledgement remains a critical factor for enforceability. Additionally, Ironclad's review of over 100 legal cases confirms that courts consistently side with companies using well structured ClickWrap mechanisms. However, if Priceline insists on maintaining a browse wrap format, then at a minimum, the terms must be made conspicuous and unavoidable before a user takes any action on the site. This could include placing a prominent banner or interstitial page with the terms linked and a statement like, by continuing, you agree to the terms of use. Such a setup might meet the enforceability threshold, though it still poses legal risks. Ultimately, the safest course for Priceline is a properly implemented ClickWrap agreement. To summarize, Priceline's current browse wrap terms of use are most likely not a legally binding contract. Users are not reasonably bound because there is no affirmative consent. The arbitration clause is likely unenforceable, and Priceline should adopt a ClickWrap system to protect itself legally and enhance user trust. If Priceline refuses to implement ClickWrap, they should at least move the terms of use to a prominent, unavoidable location before any interaction to reduce legal exposure. Thank you for watching this analysis. Once again, I'm John Gartung, digital analyst, and I appreciate your time. See you in the next one.